Are you tired of never having the correct capacitor on your truck? Do you have one of these universal capacitors but don't want to use it because it looks like it's from the future and it scares you? Well, if so, you came to the right place. So today, we're going to quickly talk about how to wire capacitors in parallel and in series. So we can essentially make a bigger capacitor in parallel, or we can wire them in series and make a smaller capacitor. Let's start playing with some capacitors safely. All right, guys, so first let's start by wiring capacitors in parallel to make larger capacitors. For demonstrational purposes, we're just going to use the easy ones. We got 5, 10, a 15, and a 20. So let's say you're on a job and you need a 15 microfarad capacitor, but you don't have one. All you have is, let's say, a 10, a 20, and a 5. Well, you can take your 10 and your 5, simply wire them in parallel, and you can make a 15. Those are now wired in parallel. Now let's run an imaginary wire off to our motor or our compressor or whatever it is we need to run. Now let's test it and see if we do indeed have 15 microfarads. And we do, 14.94. All right. Now let's say we need a 40 microfarad capacitor. And all we have at our disposal is a 15, a 20, a 5, and a 10. Well, we can use our 20, 15, and, oh, wrong one. 20, 15, and a 5, and we can make a 40 microfarad capacitor. So let's wire these guys in parallel. All right, so right here, all these capacitors wired in parallel, we should indeed have a homemade 40 microfarad capacitor. And we do, 39.79 microfarads. Now, having all these capacitors inside, let's say, a little tiny condensing unit or the blower housing of a furnace might be kind of difficult. But again, this is just for emergency purposes. You could do something like this to get them by until the following day. Now, let's say we needed a 50. Let's just wire this 10 in parallel here. We'll just add the 10 on the end here. Now, this may not give you enough gigawatts to get you back to 1985, but it may give you just enough power to get whatever it is you need running, up and running for the night. There we do. We have 50 microfarads, 49.6. So that, guys, essentially is how you can wire capacitors in parallel to make a larger capacitor. All right, guys, so let's get into how to wire capacitors in series to essentially make a smaller capacitor. Now, the mathematical formula for this is simply capacitor number 1 times capacitor number 2 divided by capacitor number 1 plus capacitor number 2. Pretty simple, but in my opinion, you're not going to use this nearly as much as you would wiring capacitors in parallel. Very rarely would you need to make some sort of weird small size capacitor. So we'll go through a couple little examples here. The first one, we'll take our 5. So let's say we only have we only have two 5 microfarad capacitors on our truck, and for whatever reason, we need a 2.5. So let's go 5 times 5, which is, of course, 25. Then we'll do 5 plus 5, which, according to my calculations, is 10. And then we divide that, we get 2.5. So by taking these two capacitors, wiring them in series, we should get a 2.5 microfarad capacitor. Right there, this is our series. Now let's see if this is correct. And we do, 2.5. So in whatever emergency that we had where we needed a 2.5 microfarad capacitor, but we only had 5s, and we didn't want to overload the motor by putting 5s in there, we could simply wire these in series and make a 2.5. All right, let's move on to another example here. Let's say we need a 5 microfarad capacitor, and all we have on our truck are two 10 microfarad capacitors. First, let's do the quick little math here. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 plus 10, I'm pretty sure is still 20. So you guys can do the math. If I can write here. Comes out to 5. So let's test out that theory. Wire this one in series with this one. Boom. Boom. We are now in series. Two 10 microfarad capacitors in series should essentially give us a 5 microfarad capacitor. And we do, 5.01 microfarads. Now, let's say for whatever reason we need a 3.75 microfarad capacitor. We'll take our 15, these 10s out of the way, and we'll take our 5. Wire in series. Real simple. Put one here. Put it right there on that one. How about that? There. Now we are in series. We have a 15 and a 5 wired in series. Now let's try it out. We should have 3.75. And we do. 3.72 to be exact. All right, guys. That does it for today's video. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you got something out of it. I know I did. It's been fun, but I'm going to get out of here, all right, guys? So I will see you on the next one. If you do like this video, share it with some friends, all right? We'll see you around.